It has been rightly quoted by Sir Brian Greene that science is a way of life. It is a perspective. Science is the process that takes us from confusion to understanding in a manner that's precise, predictive, and reliable. A transformation for those lucky enough to experience it that is empowering and emotional. A very good morning to our distinguished guest and keynote speaker, Professor Ganesh Bagla, our principal ma'am, Professor C. Sheila Reddy, who due to some pressing engagement will join us a bit later. Respected professors and my dear fellow students, on behalf of the science fraternity of Sri Venkateswara College, I wish you all a very happy National Science Day. It has long been agreed upon that science is important and contributes to human development. Every year, on February 28th, National Science Day is observed in India to draw attention to its importance. The objective of this day is to recognize the contribution of scientists to the nation's advancement. Also, it honors Sir Chandrasekhar Venkataraman, a well-known physicist who discovered the Raman effect and received the Nobel Prize for it in 1930. On this special occasion, we all are extremely delighted to have amongst us Professor Ganesh Bagla, Infosys Center for Artificial Intelligence, IIIT Delhi, as the keynote speaker for the day. Sir will definitely make this day even more enriching for all of us through his address. We are extremely honored to have you, sir. It is our holy tradition to worship our goddess Saraswati before starting with any important event. So, we would like to appreciate the goddess of wisdom for her blessings by kindling the lamp. I would invite the highly regarded dignitaries for lighting of the lamp. Let us all also dedicate a prayer to Ma Saraswati along with this, for which I would like to call on the podium Niladri. May the divine power bless us all.
Shuklam Brahmavichar Saraparama Madhyam Jagat Veena Pustakadharini Abhayada Jadyandhakara Hasti Sphatikamanikam Vidhati Padmasane Sansitam Vande Tam Parameshwari Bhagavati Buddhi Pradasha Buddhi Pradasha Buddhi Pradasha
I think they're very easy. Sorry. It's okay. We'll do one more chair probably. Oh, yeah, you can use the high chair.
Thank you, Niladri, for giving us a beautiful start to this day. I now welcome our respected guests and all the highly regarded dignitaries on the dais. I now request Dr. Nandita Narayanasamy to kindly present the memento to Professor Ganesh as a token of our appreciation. Thank you, ma'am. Now I invite Dr. Shakuntala Vadhwa from the Mathematics Department to offer a sapling to sir. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would like to invite our coordinator, Dr. Nandita Narayanasamy, on the podium for the welcome address.
Good morning, everyone. And my dear colleagues and students. Okay, we are gathered here today to commemorate Dr. C.V. Raman, who was an eminent scientist with us, and also to celebrate the National Science Day. As Indians, we should be proud of it. The underlying tenet of science has always been curiosity and innovation. And this has led us to question whatever we see around us. It's not audible? What I was telling was that science has always been about curiosity and innovation. And this has led us to question whatever we see around us and to find answers to the questions that we find interesting. And this basic science, this pure science, has driven technology, which has made our life much easier. And therefore, science and technology are sort of married to each other, and we move forward with that. And the major reason we do this is to make our life much, much easier. And today, what we are trying to do as a topic is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is again an innovation where we have always found the human mind to be something very, very interesting. And artificial intelligence is a simulation of our human intelligence and trying to replicate that in machines and particularly in computers. How successful have we been with that is something which we will learn today. Now, artificial intelligence is now at the threshold of being one of the most important topics that is going to revolutionize what we see in science and technology and also in how we lead our life. But is this something new? I don't think so. Because if you look at it, at least I grew up watching Star Wars and we had C-3PO and R2-D2 there and they were robots and we were very excited about that. And you always had a lot of cartoons wherein you had things which showed robots, they showed artificial intelligence in various aspects. But for some years, I think in the 70s and the 80s, there was a sort of freeze on research in artificial intelligence. I'm not sure why, but the renaissance of artificial intelligence, if you look at it, actually happened somewhere in 1997 when there was an IBM computer which managed to beat the grandmaster of chess, Garry Kasparov. When that happened, everybody opened their eyes and they looked at artificial intelligence in a new light. And people started looking at technology that can actually replicate human intelligence. Then there was the onset of this Roomba. It was a completely automatic vacuum cleaner that could take over housekeeping completely. How effective it was, I'm still not sure, but it was there. It came into the market in 2002 and people started using it. And today we know that artificial intelligence has sort of insidiously put out its tentacles throughout our life. We don't even realize it's there because all of us I know Amazon's Alexa, and we also know Siri. So we all know that, but we don't actually associate it with artificial intelligence. It is artificial intelligence. And of course, now we also have what is the teacher's bane and the student's boon, ChatGPT. And we have to deal with it. Like I was telling sir, how do we deal with the ChatGPT? So there we have artificial intelligence in our lives every day, everywhere, but we don't recognize it. And what is more interesting is that it is getting into areas like healthcare. It is getting into areas like agriculture. It is getting into areas of security, where there are concerns about how much it can do, and also there's an excitement of what it can do. So there is both the good and the bad, the pros and the cons. And therefore, today what we have organized for all of you students is a talk by Professor Bagler, who I welcome, and also a panel discussion where we'll have 3 panelists and we will do a sort of discussion on the pros and cons of artificial intelligence. And we have a student competition turn court, wherein the students will be debating on the ethics and economics of artificial intelligence. So we have a whole day packed for you, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your address. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Sharda Pasricha on the podium to introduce our esteemed guest and keynote speaker, Professor Ganesh Bagler, to all of us. We welcome you, ma'am.
Good morning and warm greetings on this lovely Tuesday morning. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Ganesh Bagler, keynote speaker for the day. Professor Bagler is a pioneer and an expert in computational gastronomy. As a teenager, he aspired to be an astronomer. Trained in physics, computer science, and computational biology, he has had an adventurous journey from astronomy to gastronomy. He is a prolific interdisciplinary scientist, voracious reader, science communicator, and TEDx speaker. In his own words, he enjoys probing the structure, function, evolution, and design of complex systems, which include protein, brain, health, cuisines, language, etc. His motto, making food computable. Currently, he's working as an associate professor at IIIT Delhi and is also closely associated with the Department of Computational Biology and Infosys Center for Artificial Intelligence, New Delhi. He's keenly interested in conducting research with undergraduate students. He has conducted research projects with more than 300 undergraduate students, leading to peer-reviewed publications. He has guided 5 PhD theses and 2 are currently under progress. Sir has delivered more than 150 talks in the last 7 years. He's also actively engaged in creation and transfer of technology to industry. He has been honored several times for his outstanding contribution to teaching and research. These include Rajiv Sangal Faculty Fellowship 2020 for Holistic Development of Students, Outstanding Educator Award 2018, and International Fellow of Santa Fe Institute, USA. Sir has developed several AI-based resources like Recipe Database, a structured repository of recipes from across the globe, Flavor Database, a repository for flavor molecules found in food ingredients, ratatouille generating novel recipes with artificial intelligence, and bittersweet machine learning models to predict taste of molecules, and several others. Uh, we are very happy to have a prolific researcher and a distinguished teacher amongst us here today. I request Professor Pagler to kindly deliver his keynote address. Thank you.
We have the video all the time. All right, very good morning to all of you. Thank you for that kind introduction. It's pretty humbling. At the same time, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be addressing this August audience on the occasion of National Science Day, and conveying you the excitement that has been happening in the area of artificial intelligence, which many of us are privy about, but at the same time, focusing a lot on the creative aspect and how AI is trying to take over different creative endeavors that we associate with human beings. And we'll be giving you an overview of that with a lot of focus on computational gastronomy. It's about cooking. And before I come to that, may I say that today we are celebrating the discovery of the Raman effect, which C.V. Raman discovered way back in 1928 in Indian Association of Cultivation of Sciences, what was then called as Calcutta. And for his discovery, within a very, very short span of time, 2 years, he ended up being awarded the Nobel Prize in 1930. And to talk about that, this is one of the books that has been written about the spirit of a giant by G. Venkateswara, which I'll be highlighting here, and remembering the discovery of Raman, which threw light on light matter interaction and enabled us to get the molecular fingerprint of the material through which the light is passing through. And having said that, let's come to the topic of the day today, which is the AI-driven future of creativity. And while doing so, I'll be telling you how AI is running across the canvas of creative writing, prose, poetry, music, science, sports, and all the way up to sensory, which includes cooking. I am Ganesh Bagler. I am from IIIT Delhi. And as it is always the case, I would like to point it out, and I'm sure my colleague from IIIT Delhi, Venkateswara, would agree, that it's mentioned here as IIT Delhi. Yeah, true. We are as good as IIT Delhi, but we are IIIT Delhi. Maybe better.
One eye better. One eye better.
Right. So I'm associated with Department of Computational Biology and Center for Artificial Intelligence, from where even Venkateswara belongs to. And I would like to present you some of the exciting stuff that we are doing in my lab as well as at the center, touching upon the aspects of AI and creativity. Since we are talking about creativity, it is relevant for us to look at how creativity is defined. So there are multiple definitions that I've picked up from different sources, reliable sources, which define creativity, for example, as a phenomena wherein something new and valuable is created. Well, that's very broad and generic. And another definition is that of the ability, perhaps of a human and intelligent agent, to produce or use original or unusual ideas. And very abstract definition, which I put at the bottom, but I guess these first two definitions of creativity give us a glimpse, while not exactly crystallizing it, about what creativity means to us. And then comes the topic of artificial intelligence. What is it that we are talking about here? So I guess the definition that I subscribe to is on the top, which is the study of the way in which computers, or may I say algorithms, can be made to copy the way humans think, to imitate human intelligence, intuition, and expertise through an algorithm, through a computer program, is what artificial intelligence, broadly speaking, tries to emulate. And talking about creativity and intervention by AI, may I touch upon different aspects of creativity? Imagine an alien coming to Earth and trying to figure out what are these different species trying to do and what are they characterized by. And when doing so, I'm sure that as opposed to any other species on the Earth, Homo sapiens, which are the dominant species today, would be characterized by various aspects of intelligence, abstract thinking, and creativity. Of them, some of them would be languages. Cultures across the globe have come up with different ways of communicating in a very nuanced and articulate manner, which no other species has to the depth that Homo sapiens have. So language is one of the characterizing features of Homo sapiens. The way we write, the way we create prose and poetry is one of the most creative aspects, may I say, which also would be identified by an alien. And then there are other aspects, such as that of how we paint and express ourselves through visual media, how we create music and express ourselves through auditory mechanisms. And of course, you have sensory mechanisms, such as taste and odor. For example, cooking itself is a combination of both. And you have fragrances, for example. So there are various ways that Homo sapiens have found ways of expressing themselves, sometimes because of necessity, such as that of eating, but at the same time, sometimes which looks like a futile exercise about why do we create poetry in the first place or create paintings, might be considered to be a vain exercise, but at the same time, looks like that is a defining aspect of what we are, Homo sapiens. Now, if, and not to mention the sports, some of the sports that we indulge in could seem like, again, very futile exercise about why do we do so. And among them, let me pick and choose one of the examples that was mentioned just a while before, and that of board games such as chess and Go. Now, as you can imagine that board games, think of chess, is one of the games which is very well defined in terms of how it is to be played and how do you decide when a player wins or the game is drawn. And this was one of the aspects of intelligence, or if you wish, creativity, because those of you who play chess would obviously realize that while there is an aspect of thinking about the strategies while playing chess, but at the same time, there is an element of creativity. There is something unique about the way Vishwanathan Anand plays versus that of Kasparov that you can clearly imagine. And this creative aspect of playing a game which is as rule-based as that of chess is something which is what we try to imitate. And that is where, way back in 1997, which was highlighted here, turned out that Deep Blue, an IBM computer, which was designed to play chess, designed to think of strategies well in advance, trying to compute with human intuition, and trying to come up with, trying to beat an intelligent agent, was designed. And turned out that while many anticipated that Kasparov might end up beating Deep Blue, which he did in the first game, but the later games, after 3 draws, ended up losing a couple of games after that. And that turned out to be a turning point when it comes to using computation for beating human agents, and as intelligent and creative agent as that of Kasparov, who was the leading chess player at that time. And this was one of the most vivid example that computers can possibly imitate intelligence and potentially creativity. However, there have been doubts about it. And this is one of the books that I figured out again from the same time around 1997 or so, which was published. It's about virtual news, wherein the author of this book, Hartman, tried to come up with strategies, computational strategies, by which one can actually create poetry. So he tried to distill what it is to be a poet and how one weaves words together so as to create poetry, which is found to be beautiful by anyone who reads it, human agents. And while doing so, he realized that at that point of time, it was an extremely challenging task And he, in fact, concedes in this book that while we can come up with ways by which a poet can be enabled with computational strategies, it is practically impossible to beat a real poet such as Wordsworth, maybe, or Shakespeare, or similar. Of course, we are talking about English poetry. You can think of vernacular languages and poetry done in different languages, right from Ravi Thakur, Rabindranath Tagore, or to anyone else for that matter. Now, we stand at an era where ChatGPT, when given a prompt, will be able to create a poetry. So if you ask ChatGPT to create a poem about National Science Day and describe C.V. Raman's discovery in the context of Science Day, it will be able to come up with a poem, which I didn't try yesterday night because of shortage of time, but you guys can try, and I'm damn sure it will come up with a nice poetry, which to an extent you would be amazed in terms of how the words are being weaved by ChatGPT. Now, what is ChatGPT at the end of the day? It is trying to collate a large amount of data through which it is trying to understand the underlying structure of language, the rules of grammar. It is somehow embedded within the data that it has cobbled together. And having done so, it is a generative algorithm which can now, thanks to the power of the training that it has undergone, it is able to generate text, whether it is prose or for that matter, poetry. Now, it is debatable whether this poetry will it be able to beat human intelligence or human creativity at any point of time or not. However, having said that, we are at a tipping point, may I say, wherein large language models, which is what is underlying ChatGPT, the GPT algorithm itself, seems to be at a juncture where they will be able to definitely be beat a teacher into thinking that a prose which has been written or an assignment that is solved has been actually done by their student and not by a program. Now comes going beyond text generation, there is a new avenue and the other domain, which is that of visuals, paintings. And obviously, there has been an algorithm, many algorithms that have come, of which many of you would know about DALI 2 and stable diffusion and equivalents of that, wherein again, similar to that of a text, they have cobbled together a large amount of imageries, pictures, such that when given a prompt, such as show me, paint me an elephant flying in the desert of Sahara, and it will actually come up with such an imagery, having got the underlying elements which have been gathered together by a large amount of image, huge number of images that have been gathered over internet. So looks like again that a single prompt can actually come up with a creative imagery. And this is one example wherein an AI generated picture ended up winning an art prize. And obviously artists weren't happy. And similarly, poets wouldn't be happy, teachers wouldn't be happy when large language models are able to generate text which looks so much human-like, right? Again, all of these are crystal clear cases of artificial intelligence in practice. And for the last few years, especially for the last 3 to 5 years, there has been stupendous growth in these models, which have been trained on different type of neural network architectures, which can learn from a large corpus of text, or for that matter, images, so as to create something absolutely new, or at least something which looks like new. And in a similar direction, probably it looks like that having seen the growth of algorithms such as DALI for creating images based on a prompt, or ChatGPT, which we have learned in the last year, can generate text. Seems like this year is going to be that of music. And obviously signs of this were present in the last few years. And this was last year when a team of musicologists and computer scientists came together to complete an unfinished Beethoven symphony, the 10th symphony. And it was played to non-expert as well as expert audiences to ask them, where did the original symphony that was created by Beethoven ends, and where is it that a newly generated, AI-generated symphony starts? And they were not able to make it out, clearly suggesting that it is possible to capture the signature of Beethoven through an AI program, which can actually generate recreate what Beethoven wanted to possibly generate. Of course, there is no way of recreating this experiment and figuring out what actually Beethoven wanted. Of course, there are ways of doing it, of looking at existing Beethoven symphonies, putting them in pieces and trying to recreate by an algorithm based on only partial data and seeing to what extent we are able to capture the creativity of Beethoven. I personally believe that the day is not too far when we will have an AI Rahman, the artificial intelligent Rahman program, which will try to recapture the creativity of A.R. Rahman and similarly other musicians and composers that we are aware of. Now let's come to the today's topic, which is what I'm going to highlight, going beyond some of these AI-driven algorithms. To an extent now, after so many years of Deep Blue's conquer against Kasparov, it might seem that, okay, it's all right for you to create an algorithm for playing chess or maybe Go, which is far more complicated in terms of number of strategies and the space of strategies that an algorithm needs to span through. But to talk about creative writing, poetry, music, and painting seems like you are trespassing into deeply human territory and probably are dehumanizing what is so dear, what is so characteristic of humans. I'm going to talk about something again, which is so unique and specific to humans, which is that of the art of cooking. And I would like to proclaim and would like to take this bait and to say that an AI algorithm is not too far away, which will actually generate recipes and a restaurant which can actually dish out AI generated recipes. Now you might think it is impossible, but I take the pleasure of standing here in SBC and talking about the last 8 years wherein in our lab we have been working on this new area altogether called computational gastronomy. And on this count, I would like to also mention that after our research, which was done way back in 2014 and 15 in IIT Jodhpur, SVC, and was the first place, Professor Latha invited me way back in 2015 to present this work. And I guess this was the only, this was the first public presentation of the research that we had done at that point of time. And for me, it is a journey of 8 years, which I am now telling in SBC, telling what has happened in the last 8 years. Cooking is a magical process wherein raw ingredients are put together, processed to create delicious recipes. And cultures have come up with idiosyncratic fashions by which they put together recipe ingredients to create recipes which characterize these cuisines. And that is how we distinguish Indian cuisine versus that of Italian or Brazilian for that matter. And within India, we of course take pride in being South Indian or North Indian or Bengali or Maharashtrian or Gujarati, and to talk about our own recipes and what we relish. Turns out that human brain probably has benefited because of our ability of cooking. It has been argued that because on evolutionary time scale, because of the time that was left out, and since we were able to cook it, process it, we had the ready available calories, and which is why we could develop disproportionately large brain sizes that we tend to have as Homo sapiens. And therefore, we also got this ability, perhaps, of abstract thinking and enough scope for indulging into what seems like futile exercises, such as painting, poetry, and music, perhaps. And that's an argument. In fact, this argument is heightened in this particular book called Catching Fire, How Cooking Made Us Human by Richard Wrangham, where he argues that the act of cooking, the art of cooking itself is central and distills what makes us human. Having said that, ironically, we stand at a place where the ability of cooking, while it has made us what we are and distinguishes us from other species, at the same time is at the core, at the center of the epidemic of lifestyle disorders. Type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disorders, and other lifestyle disorders seem to be having basis, apart from many other factors, in diet, in what we eat. And on a larger scale, I would say that 30 years down the line, we may be facing a population of 10 billion and a challenge of feeding these 10 billion people in a sustainable manner. Will we be able to do with the conventional practices that we are used to, or should we be changing the practices from farm to fork to come up with a completely new food ecosystem is the question that I'm trying to ask. And that is where my wager is that using data science, computational approaches, and artificial intelligence, we should be able to make food computable. So my wager is that of making food computable so as to revolutionize the food landscape globally. And that is what I'm going to portray in the remaining time. If you are wondering what is computational gastronomy all about, it is simply put a blend of food, data science, and the power of computation to come up with data-driven food innovations. And I'll be exemplifying some of those as I go along. When I talk about food, I'm looking at different aspects of food. Imagine you eating a dish and relishing it and feeling that aha. And the moment that happens, it is happening because of the immediate recipe which has been created and has been passed on over centuries, if not millennia. And that's the dish that you are relishing. And there is a history, anthropology, and cultural aspect that are involved in it, including the geography, climate, as well as religious factors that have shaped those recipes. And that goes all the way up to a few centuries or maybe a millennia. And if you stretch it back, it might go to the beginning of agricultural revolution around 15,000 years back. And then there are aspects about how we feel the sensation of taste and odor, and that has been ingrained all the way up to the DNA. The genes which are responsible for how we taste and feel the sensation of taste and odor. So there are multiple aspects to it. One of that is the traditional recipes, cultural aspect of it. Then the hedonic aspect, the taste and odor aspect of it. Finally, you have nutrition aspect of it and the health impact of the ingredients and the recipes that we consume. Because we know that some of these ingredients have good and bad effects on us. Think about the cheese, alcoholic beverages, ginger, or turmeric. All of these have been evidently shown through scientific research that they do have different kind of effects. So compiling all of these aspects of food is something which had to be done. And when we started this work way back in 2014 and 15, none of this data was available. Remember, none of artificial intelligence or data science is possible in the absence of quality curated data. You need to have that. And that is what, having realized that it's a blind spot that has been not figured out by the scientists, we started working out in our lab. And in the last 8 years, we have put together an impressive landscape of computational gastronomy data, compiling traditional recipes, more than 118,000, which is 118,000 recipes from across the globe, 26 regional cuisines and 74 countries, in a structured manner using natural language processing and name entity recognition. And as you can imagine, the tools of artificial intelligence, such as machine learning algorithms, have been plentifully used while creating these databases. Then we have Flavor DB, which touches upon the taste and odor aspect of ingredients and the flavor molecules because of which we taste and smell the ginger and onion the way we do. And we have also the nutrition value of ingredients as well as the recipes and the health impact, such as through the databases such as DietRx, and a plenty of other resources that we have created, which capture different aspects of food in a manner that now the food becomes computable. You can use computational strategies on these to investigate and ask interesting questions to discover why do we eat what we eat? Is there a reason why certain ingredients are combined the way they are? Why is it that the ingredients and the recipes smell and taste the way they do? Or can we come up with an interesting dish and a recipe which is universally liked across maybe the whole of India and maybe the whole of globe, which is what the food and beverages companies would like to do. When we did this work for the first time, we were looking at what is called as the food pairing phenomena. By looking at the data of recipes, their ingredients, and the flavor molecules in them, we used a simple definition of what is food pairing, a simple mathematical and statistical definition of food pairing, and we characterized cuisines. For the first time, we began with Indian recipes, and that time we had only 2,500 odd recipes, which we had extracted from Tarla Dalal's website. And from that time onwards, today, we stand at a large 118,000 recipes from across the globe, and we have figured out culinary fingerprints of regional cuisines to begin with, that of Indian regional cuisines. And these are in a statistical manner explained here, telling about the uniqueness of the cuisine in terms of what category of ingredients dominate them. And the highlight of the paper was that we found out that spices are the molecular fulcrum of Indian recipes. Now you will say that no big deal about it. We know that. And chefs told me the same, that, Dr. Bagler, we know that indeed spices are critical for Indian recipes. But at the same time, they had the patience to tell me that, look, while we knew it intuitionally and experientially, thanks for doing the maths and statistics of Indian recipes and telling it, quote unquote, scientifically that indeed spices are central to Indian recipes across Indian cuisine. So you may say that, we talk about diversity and integrity across Indian cultures, right? In a way, we showed that in a culinary, statistically speaking and mathematically speaking, we can dig down the recipes and see that there is something common across all Indian cuisines, which is that of dominance of spices at the molecular level. And at the same time, they have different culinary fingerprints, which I had shown you on the previous slide. And this research, when we did, surprisingly ended up getting attention from some of the major scientific and media houses, starting with MIT Tech Review, which to begin with highlighted it as an emerging technology. And by the end of the year, 2015, it highlighted it as the best of 2015 research article, which still remains on archive, I proudly say so. I never ended up going through peer review and publishing this particular research article. And this journey, which started with Indian recipes and Indian cuisines, we extended it far further after that, having realized the potential of it. Now, never would I have thought that having worked in different aspects of computational biology, investigating protein structures, trying to look at brain mechanisms and brain networks using graph theoretical approaches, and even indulging into in silico drug discovery, I would have thought that these would have been some of the most important contributions that I can make to, which can be impactful at a societal level. But none of that happened. But when I serendipitously worked with my undergraduate and postgraduate students in IIT Jodhpur on the food pairing phenomena, I realized that there is a huge potential here, which took some time for me to absorb, that indeed industry, apart from the societal benefits, would be getting a lot out of this research that we have done. And then I made it a focus of my research in the laboratory. Apart from doing other works, we focused on this area. And in retrospect, we ended up calling it as computational gastronomy, which has now taken a fancy of a lot many researchers, including that in computer science and food sciences and other areas, and they have been investigating different aspects of these. So going beyond India, we looked at the culinary fingerprints of the world cuisines and found out what is so unique about Italian cuisine versus that of Indian versus that of maybe Southeast Asian cuisines. And that is what we figured out. And this paper was again done with undergraduate students, ended up getting the best paper award in one of the computer science journals in what is considered to be the Mecca of food, Paris. And we were very pleased to having done this at that time. You must have seen the tree of languages, which shows similarities and dissimilarities between different languages, telling how, for example, Urdu and Hindi have certain similarities. And far closer, I would say, Kannada and Telugu are far more similar to each other phonetically and even in terms of script, I would say, right? So these similarities and dissimilarities have been captured through the language tree. And in a similar manner, we have tried to build and are refining the world cuisine tree, which tells us about the uniqueness, similarities and dissimilarities of culinary practices across the global cuisines, and tells us interesting history of cuisines may have evolved, recipes may have evolved. And there are a lot of interesting takeaways here, which I won't get into details of it, but you may think about certain ingredients that were never part of Indian subcontinent, the potato and chili, which is so common, and recipes which were borrowed from different parts, different cultures, may I say, right from jalebi to samosa, right? And well, there are signatures of that. Another question that I would like to ask in the context of recipes is, how many recipes are possible, you think? And if you were to imagine the recipes that you eat on a day-to-day basis, turns out that staple diet is rather limited. The number of recipes that you have consumed in the last 1 year, if you were to put together, I bet it would not go beyond a few hundreds. That's all. Yeah. But if you were to compile all the possible recipes that are there, again, the number is not very big. The ballpark figure might come out to be 100,000, a million, but not more than that. People will stop after a few million. And turns out that documented recipes, leaving alone the recipes which are not documented, are not privileged, and not from elite class, even they, when put together, would not go beyond a few million. So, given the fact that a standard recipe, which you have found out from the statistics, typical recipe is having 10 ingredients, and the number of ingredients basket that is available to us is of the order of 1,000, conservatively speaking. The number is pretty large actually, but if you leave alone the variations of potatoes and chilies and etc., well, it turns out that of the order of 1,000 is what we have. By simple permutations and combinations, the number of recipes that you can arrive at is astronomically large. It is more than the estimated number of stars that are there in the whole universe. Now, of course, I know you guys are thinking and asking this question, are all these recipes palatable? Well, that's a relevant question to ask. But we said that innovation in cooking happens by experiments that each one of us does who cooks. Okay, chefs are of course the stalwarts, and they are the they represent everyone who cooks. However, everyone who experiments in their kitchen, including our mothers and maybe fathers who cook, are the ones who are these innovators. And I started asking this question, which is of course coming from the purview of artificial intelligence, that can a computer think like a chef? Now, talking about that, we are thinking about putting together an algorithm which can imitate the expertise, intuition of a chef. Can we really do that? And for doing that, all the data that we have gathered, which I mentioned to you about, is going to be extremely crucial. Can we learn from patterns that are present in the existing recipes so as to come up with new ways of creating recipes? Similar to ChatGPT. So we are actually using generative algorithms at the back end of it to come up with new recipes. And remember that this question seems pretty pinching when you ask, can a computer think like a chef? So I made it a little more pinching and personal by putting together, this chef Manjit Singh Gill, who is the president of Indian Federation of Culinary Association. Of course, this post has been created with his permission, where we asked this question: can a computer think like a chef, a specific chef? And when I did this sometime back at the for advertising the symposium on computational gastronomy, which we have been doing it every December, this became so popular that Chef Thomas Gugler, who is the president of World Chefs, was so impressed that he said, let me create, why don't you create one for me? So we did one for him as well. But the moot question remains, can an algorithm be designed which can imitate the intelligence and intuition of a chef? While the generative algorithms, large language models, take a data-driven approach, the idea would be, is it possible to have a grammar of cooking? And that is what I ended up proposing. It's an archive paper sitting still on the in archive. And here is where I essentially imitated what Noam Chomsky did in 1950s to talk about the generative grammar of languages. I have come up with a grammar of cooking, and I believe it's something interesting. Going beyond the data-driven approach, we can have a rule-based approach also, which can be used for creating new recipes. I provide analogous to the Chomsky's grammar, rules with which ingredient culinary units, I call them qubits, culinary bits, can be put together to create phrases, ingredient phrases, which can be put together further to create sentences, which put together will create a recipe, and multiple recipes put together will create a cuisine. So it's analogous to that of a language, that of words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, stories, and multiple stories make a culture. Right? So that's what analogously has been designed here. And I believe that all of this can be used to create an algorithm which can imitate chef's creativity. And which is what I proclaimed initially, that Ratatouille, which has been named so deliberately. How many of you have seen this movie Ratatouille? Cool. So you know this adventure of a rat which is trying to learn cooking and impressed by human cooking and doesn't want to imitate his brethren and eat something which is left over, but would like to cook. And in this movie, Chef Gustav keeps saying, anyone can cook. So we are obviously taking this idea to a little too extreme and say that inanimate objects such as an algorithm, in fact, it's a debatable question whether algorithm is itself is inanimate or animate. Is it a living or non-living entity? But we'll not get into that because there is a lot of debate of AI becoming sentient So we won't get into that so far. But we have this published work, Ratatouille. It's a little dated algorithm, but it is still available, and we are providing you a newer algorithms which are far better than what we had designed earlier. It can actually come up with, based on a prompt, that if you give a prompt of, I have pumpkin, tomato, and some fresh mushrooms, can you cook up, create a recipe for me? So it actually will come up with a recipe such as this one, starting with the title of the recipe to the ingredients and all the way up to the instructions, telling you about what to cook. All right. Of course, the most interesting question that you should be asking is that how many of these recipes have you cooked, Ganesh, yourself? Well, some of them we have, and some of them we are collaborating with IHMs and chef community, trying to actually cook them, to taste them, pun intended, TASTE, taste, and see how palatable they are, tasty they are. That's what we are trying to do. So this was a summary of how artificial intelligence and data science approaches, statistical approaches can be used, even rule-based approaches can be used to cobble together an algorithm, starting from scattered data, structured data repositories like RecipeDB, FlavorDB, etc., all the way up to creating algorithms which can cook out recipes. And I'm pleased to say that tomorrow we have this night of chefs organized by the French Embassy and French Institute of India in Sundar Nursery. We'll be presenting this work, and I want to see the response of the French community when I talk about ratatouille, about how do they respond to it. But then, as a first step before cooking, we have designed the Turing test, which you may have heard as part of AI and computer science, a Turing test for chefs, which is secretly being launched for only experts right now, wherein they can log in through an Android app through this. It's a web page. It need not be Android app. Sorry, it can be. It's a web page, so you can log in from any mobile, and you will be shown a recipe of this sort, and you're supposed to give a assessment, your assessment about it being fake or real on a scale of 0 to 5, which obviously we are going to do some calculations, number crunching to figure out how good is our algorithm in generating recipes that can fool a chef into thinking that a computer generated recipe is real simply by reading it right now. Of course, the recipes which pass this test will be taken to the kitchen and cooked and tasted. Well, and a lot of other interesting stuff that we are doing with this data science going beyond AI is that of Foodle. I don't know how many of you play Wordle, but equivalent of that, we have created Foodle. The idea is to use the gamification as a concept for coming up with strategies to nudge people into eating better. And that better can be defined whichever way in terms of nutrition and health aspect of it, and even teaching about different aspects of nutrition and health of ingredients and recipes, which is what we are trying to do. And this Foodle is now available, but the dictionary will be updated very soon, and we will have a better version coming up. And we're trying to obviously make it come up with a culinary lexicon and ontology, which will be source, which will be the power of this game. And we have algorithms such as what dish. I don't know how many of you have come across, and people who, I mean, among the younger audiences, probably this is not much of a problem, but those who are trying to maintain their weight and improve their health have apps which will tell you about what to eat and what not to eat, but you need to make a record of what you have consumed on a daily basis. And that's a pain point about making a record that I had, 2 idlis, 1 dosa, a bit of sambar and chutney or dhokla on a day-to-day basis every time that you eat anything. That is where we have come up with this tool, which is based on the computer vision algorithms that we are using at the back end, called What Dish. It's yet to be launched, so don't look for it on the Play Store yet. But at the same time, this has won the Best Paper Award with only 10 dishes for which we had designed this tool. But now we have stretched it further to 20 dishes, and right now it stands at 60 most popular Indian dishes, wherein take your mobile, open the app, point it at your dish, click, and it will identify all the dishes and will also map it to its estimated nutritional profile, primarily calories, telling you right from the morning that you are in the green zone, yellow zone, orange zone, red zone, eat less. That's what it tells you in a very visual fashion. So that's what we are trying to do. All right. Obviously, we're trying to take it global, going beyond India and trying to cover all the recipes from across the globe. I take pleasure in passing my knowledge, my understanding, my adventure, and my misadventures also to the students. So starting with only 3 students, the computational gastronomy course that I launched has had takers, 139 takers in the last edition. And this is when they are taking this exam, seriously thinking about food, cooking, and algorithms and coding at the same time. Well, this is the course. And of course, to summarize, the adventure of AI, I believe it's revolutionizing the landscape. And practically all of us, the younger audiences, as well as my colleagues and professors sitting here, would want to dip into it, trying to understand what is this AI, which is essentially at the back end is statistics and mathematics used in a specific manner, is transforming our lives, whether in different aspects of our lives. Examples were given earlier, right, from Siri to Alexa to image recognition, which Facebooks and Googles do automatically. But then I'm talking about creativity. So it is changing the way we think, the way we write prose, create poetry, music, painting, and even cooking is what I wanted to highlight beyond all other aspects. And we can do a lot of interesting stuff, all the way from designing new recipes to all the way up to making food sustainable, so that 30 years down the line, we would have a sustainable food ecosystem from farm to fork. That's the agenda that we are trying to do. And these adventures I'm trying to put together as a popular science book targeted at younger audiences, primarily speaking, however, open to all, in a pun intended title called Bite, which is both computer science bite as well as food bite. Tentatively titled, it might change. And this is what I'm trying to present. I don't know how many of you, since we started talking about Science Day and C.V. Raman, how many of you know that C.V. Raman was actually a very curious character, apart from other idiosyncrasies that he had, but he was interested in music as well. In fact, he has written articles discussing the physics of percussion instruments, for example. And then, therefore, it was a pleasure for me to visit Raman Research Institute just before COVID. This is the place where I've been earlier also as a summer research intern way back in 1998. But it was a pleasure to go back and visit this institution again and talk about this work on computational gastronomy. I wonder what Raman would have thought about it, because in 20th century, the stars used to be physicists. And today it seems like data scientists and computer science scientists are stars. So because he won the Nobel Prize at that time, but to celebrate his discovery way back in 1928, we are calling primarily computer scientists. Of course, don't forget, we have histories. So I myself have history in physics, and I wanted to be an astronomer always, an astrophysicist, which I couldn't become. But nonetheless, I stand today to talk about or to reminisce about the discovery and to talk about my research. Brilla Savrin was a person 200 years back, wrote a book called The Physiology of Taste, and he coined the term gastronomy way back. It has taken us more than 2 centuries for us to reach at a place where we can talk about not only gastronomy, but computational gastronomy, using data science, using artificial intelligence. What he said way back in this book 200 years back still rings true. The discovery of a new dish confers more happiness on humanity than the discovery of a new star. And this quote I read in IUCA, none other than IUCA, Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, which is known for Professor Jayant Narlikar, a star in his own rights. That is where humbly this quote has been put up on the walls. And I recollected this quote and thought, okay, I'm not able to do my astrophysics research, not discover stars or nebulas or maybe new comets, but I'm still able to discover new dishes. And this is what I believe can make humanity happier and hopefully healthier and sustainable. Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to announce IIIT Delhi Infosys Center for Artificial Intelligence Symposium on Computational Creativity, talking about poetry, painting, music, and cooking and perfumes. And we will have experts coming from different areas, including Krish Ashok, the one who has written this book about Masala Lab, the science of Indian cooking. And we also will have others, vocalist Sandeep Ranade, who has written an algorithm which can create the accompaniment, the Sat Sangat, along with vocalist, the tabla and the sitar will play with an AI instrument, right? So you like it or hate it, it's already happening. And that's what we'll be discussing. And finally, at IIIT Delhi, my lab as well as other labs are looking for inspired undergraduate students who would be wanting to do something exciting on the frontiers of AI. my lab especially has been doing it. It's already mentioned that more than 300 students. And I proudly mention two names here from SVC, Rudraksh Tuani, BSc Statistics 2016 or 17 batch from here, and Nutan Sahu. Both of them worked with me for a while. Rudraksh, especially for longer duration, published fantastic research articles on his own, may I say, with a little nudge from my side, and ended up going to Harvard and has done health data science there. So my pleasure to be at SVC and presenting this work. Thank you. Of course, if there are any. I don't know how much time did I take.
It was very interesting.
Perfect. Yeah. Are we waiting for questions or should we?
No, we should.
Yeah.
Good. So you can have a seat.
Sure.
Thank you so much, sir, for delivering such an enriching lecture on artificial intelligence. Your talk was particularly appropriate at this time when we are considering new initiatives for expanding growth. The audience is certainly intrigued by the information that you provided to us today. Further, for a short question answer session, I would like to call Molly and Anushka to conduct it, please.
I have.
Focusing on art, interactive art.
If anyone has any questions, they can ask. They can raise their hand. I'll get the mic to them.
I have. Yeah, you have. Yeah, you have.
Yeah, be cynical. I like that.
I mean, I was just telling her I don't want to be a wet blanket after such a nice talk, but if I have an AR Rahman, or why do I need an AI Rahman to tell me this is better, this accompaniment is better, that dish is better, and what does it have for people who have nothing to do with coding? Where does it leave the rest of the gang?
Second part first. What I think is that whether or not they are as explicit as the examples of music creation algorithms or even cooking algorithms, AI is already invading us. So rest of us who do not do coding, there is a plenty for us to use it in the first place, and we are already using it, right? And it is in for us because as a professor, I need to be seriously concerned about how monotonous is my job, and is an AI algorithm is going to take it away from me or not. Like I'm a devil's advocate for chefs maybe, and today I try to do the same for other creative faculties. But I believe that each one of us has to wonder about what is the future laid out for us when it comes to AI revolution. And I guess other experts who are sitting here from industry as well as academia, they will also want to pitch in and tell about how it is going to be important. So yes, it is of relevance to everyone who codes or doesn't code. I believe so. It's extremely important. And coming back to the human part, I strongly believe, my perception is this: while I talked so much about an AI algorithm for cooking, I believe that a role of human agent, say for example in cooking or music creation, will remain.
Yeah.
What is eminently going to happen in very short future is this: all of these AI algorithms, I believe, are going to be co-pilots. They will be enablers of creativity. A chef who probably cannot synthesize all the knowledge of world cuisines and think about what combinations may go well and come up with a short list of that, an AI algorithm can do it far better and enable him or her to cook better. It is going to become, you like it or not. Therefore, we need to be prepared for that world where I believe a lot of activities that are being monotonously done today will be taken over. Just think about this musician who has created this Sat Sangat, the accompaniment through an AI. There is a pros and cons. As you rightly said, the cons are like, okay, what happens to those the tabla players and sitar players? Good question to ask. But is it going to not happen because of that? No, it's going to happen because this gentleman is able to survive. Anybody who uses that app is able to save a lot of time, efforts, and money, which is what is required for a professional vocalist to prepare, all of this accompaniment is required. So it's happening, good or bad, it's happening. How do we address that? The future is something that we need to think about. But thanks for asking that question. And I know that there are a lot of cynical thoughts, devil's advocate. So feel
add to this,
free.
to add to this,
yep.
we have the satsanga. How enjoyable would it be to an audience to have a vocalist with a satsanga playing or with the actual musicians playing?
You must have attended lots of concerts
Concerts, yeah.
where real human agents are
Yeah,
playing, right?
yeah,
Sorry to say human agent, but real humans playing,
Yeah.
okay, in Satsangat, right?
Yeah.
25th of March, please come to Triple IT Delhi. This person will be having, a baitak in the evening
Okay.
with AI generated Satsangat.
Oh, I
So
want
you will
that.
see how enjoyable it is or not.
Yeah,
You should come and see
yeah.
that. You should experience that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we should,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anything is clear good to your ear, I think you're going to enjoy.
No, there's a lot of innovation that happens on stage
Stage.
with a lot of musicians. So a drummer, just the drums playing is not important, but what the drummer is doing is also important.
His body language.
His body language, the
eye
way he
contact,
innovates,
they all make an
it
impression.
happens on the stage. So
Because
I,
we are used to seeing that.
No, but
We have to look at a different angle also.
it's worth checking it out.
Yeah,
It's worth
let's
testing
check
it.
it.
But valid point, valid point. I know
Yeah.
that the nazron ke ishare that
yeah,
they do.
yeah,
All that. I know it's
exactly.
critical,
What the hell?
but you should come and check how it works.
Like for example, Zakiru said,
The
the
way
he conducts, you can hear him on the radio.
I know, I know.
Okay, but when
Not
you
the
see
same.
him, it's different. When you see him,
Yes.
it's different.
Especially when he plays the
You
jugal
guys
bandi
want
with
these
the
others?
others.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's so good.
But point well taken. So how things are changing, we don't know, but things are happening. And this particular app, for example, actually, I can, unofficially later, I can show you a demo of that. I have recorded one small thing. While going in a car, in the busy traffic, noisy traffic of Pune, you will see the way he sings, the way he changes his surtal, and the satsangat picks up. The AI satsangat picks up, and it changes. You should see that. And it's wonderful. However, I know the certain human elements that you're talking about. Watching a person, jugal bandi, all that is important, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
When you mentioned about that, there are a lot of recipes that have been generated by the AI, and you'll be testing it out with the chefs and
Yes.
the taste. But where will the health factor be tested?
Point. Valid point. At the moment, we do not have robust mechanisms by which you can taste the health mechanisms in long run. Short runs you can do, because simplest of the thing that we can do and shall be doing is that of checking the what is called as the postprandial glucose level, post meal increase in the glucose, which has a tight correlation with type 2 diabetes. So that can be tested because you have instruments available, subcutaneous glucometers, with which you can actually measure the glucose very soon after you consume your food. However, how does it affect diabetes? How does it affect obesity, cardiovascular disorders, for which you will have to do a cohort study, longitudinal cohort study? That is challenging, very difficult. All we can do is to take cue from the existing research, which tells about the good, bad, and the uglies of the ingredients, and choose the ones which we believe, based on the empirical data, is better for health. That's the best we can do right now. But that's a valid question. Yeah.
So I had a question, like most of the data science algorithms or AI algorithms require data which is in numeric terms, right? They are in numbers, right? In terms of food and culinary items, we can like consider the nutrient in numbers, but if we don't talk about the health part, there is also taste, right? So how did you convert that into numbers, and what all did you consider in that?
So these days, everything doesn't have to be in terms of, you may say down, real numbers. For example, the FlavorDB has information of molecules which are present in, let's say, onion, tomato, mango, tamarind, and their taste attributes, which are as recorded by human tasters at a molecular level. But these need not be exactly numbers. They can be today crunched without necessarily converting them into numbers as such. You can do that. Text data or other attributes can happily be incorporated as part of the algorithms.
In short, like you turn everything into a molecular level.
Well, partly it is molecular level, but it need not be. For example, after eating mango, what kind of taste one perceives? Is it sour, sweet, umami, etc.? Even those attributes can be gathered at the ingredient level. Right now, what we have is yes, going down to the molecular level, but you need not necessarily use that data per se. You can treat it at a level of taste of the ingredient also.
And like everything is based on neural net.
Well, there are different architectures. I guess some of us are here, experts are available who can give you better answers, but there are varieties of ways by which an algorithm can be made to learn. Neural network is, of course, one of the most well-known approaches. Yeah.
So my question is that one of the very good things that humans have is improvisation and taking last moment decisions. So, sir, how do we plan to embed that skill in AI? And which another question that after AI gets developed, will it have a different personality and identity like the humans now have?
Okay. The second one is controversial, and I can't answer that. But yes, there is a lot of debate about, as I mentioned on the dais also, that algorithm becoming sentient. It has developed its own mind and is acting funny, right? People talk about it, but I think I won't get into that. Improvisation, I believe that yes, to a large extent, what is considered to be improvisation is quick response to the immediate feedback, right? To an extent, even ChatGPT does that, because depending on the series of questions that you're asking, it's a chatbot. Depending on the question that you're asking and how you are prompting it back again, it changes its answers, by the way. So it is not always giving a very rigid and pre-framed answers. It is actually responding to your queries. If you say that, okay, this is not what I expected from you, it will modify itself. However, how well does it, and does it actually match to the level of skills of a human is again questionable. But the fact that it is able to do it so well that people are loving it, even for the improvisation part itself, is a for us is a lesson for us to think about. So to an extent, yes, they are able to do that, the algorithms.
So like with advancement and modification and algorithms, we can achieve more success rate in improvisation.
We hope so. And those who are pessimists hope so. And those who think that no, it's eventually the human agent, they believe never. It's never going to happen. No. Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. Way back when I did this work on food pairing or ingredient combination in food, multiple places people have prompted me saying that, why don't you look at music? Why don't you look at music? We have looked at it, but we do not have any inferences drawn as of now in terms of food practices, culinary practices rather, and that of musical practices. I personally don't think that there is any direct correlation between the two as such. However, there may be some broad, meta level association between the music. I believe it has a lot to do with the culture. So as a group which identifies itself distinctly from other, they come up with different ways of expressing themselves via ingredient combination, and similar to that of auditory combination. So I guess that is what makes it so. Otherwise, I don't see a direct causal relationship between the two per se. However, it is too early to say anything since we don't have the final results yet with us. Yeah.
And for a very nice talk, like you said, AI is the future, right? And I agree totally, right? But you said some people are going to be involved in AI, developing the algorithm, and some people are going to be consuming, right? The law of nature says, and evolution also says that something which is not in use is going to exist, right? What is going to happen to our brain? Who are the consumers?
Yeah.
And not the ones who are involved in
Okay, so I can't talk about on the evolutionary scale, but I think on a relatively more practical time scale, I could say that the consumers of the AI products would obviously be relegated to the backbench, I would say.
Yeah.
Those who are producing it would be the controllers, and there is a debate in terms of some people controlling and making most of the money, and therefore trying to come up with strategies to mitigate this. People are doing it. I don't think I'm a futurist to be able to make any serious comment on it, but I do have my own intuition about how things are going to work out. The ability of understanding AI products, maybe even designing it with or without the ability of coding or not, I think it's going to be relevant. Understanding of these AI products and using them for our purposes, for making even business ideas and products out of it is going to be relevant in the coming times. That's what I see.
Thank
So
you
that's
so
why
much.
quickly to close it, I think I really put up a quote that AI is not going to replace a chef, but a chef using AI is going to replace a chef. That's what is going to happen, and it's going to happen in every area. That's how I see. And when I put it on LinkedIn, I guess out of 100 people, I think some 70 odd people say that yes, some say maybe not, and some said absolutely not. But that's the proportion that I got. But yeah, that's I think trend of the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further, we have an interesting panel discussion for all of you. So for this, I would like to hand over the mic to Natasha now.
Welcome, everyone. We all are gathered here to have a panel discussion on the felicitous occasion of National Science Day. Now, thank you all for coming to the session. Now, before starting, we have a little snippet to play to give a glimpse of today's topic.
But also what would suit human body for people or so I think it's so there's a declining now, so that is the very what happened? Speaker. This is the problem. If technology doesn't keep up now, then everything goes wrong. Yeah. So how much what do you have? Can you hear? On. Smile.
Well, I think it's safe to say that Tom is one of the very first beings to lose his job to AI. But, well, moving on, the topic of today's panel discussion is AI, from science fiction to reality. What was once just a figment of the imagination of some of our most famous science fiction writers, artificial intelligence is taking root in our everyday lives. The way AI is evolving is both outstanding as well as alarming. AI has brought about immense convenience to mankind, but also discomfort and lack of privacy. And well, this has just led us to several unanswered questions like, will AI fully exit the realm of science fiction and begin to change everything? By the end of the discussion, I hope that some of your curiosities are cured. And well, if not, you can just Google it. Before we commence the much awaited panel discussion, I would like to call upon Dr. Anita Verma from the Department of Zoology to introduce the speakers for today.
A very good morning to everybody. A very good morning to everyone. So today, I think we're all charged up and having a lot of notions and a lot of excitement to see what AI can do to us and to our lives ahead. Today we have uh, we have great people from different academia and the industry who are going to face you and answer your questions and science your curiosities about AI. So first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Tavpritesh Sethi. He is an associate professor in the Department of Computational Biology and the founding head of the Center of Excellence in Healthcare at IIIT Delhi. His area of expertise lies at the interface of computer science and healthcare. Dr. Sethi received his MBBS from the Medical College, Amritsar, and his PhD from CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, New Delhi. He was a visiting faculty at Stanford University for 2 years. His research interest is integrating social determinants of health into infectious and non-communicable diseases for developing artificial intelligence solutions. Dr. Sethi has published more than 50 papers in international journals and has served as an academic editor for a number of journals like PLOS ONE, Nature Science Report, Peer Journals, and the Journal of Genetics. It's an absolute privilege to have you over here, sir. Next, I would like to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Devayan Gupta. He is currently an assistant professor at the Computer Science at Ashoka University. He is also a visiting professor and research affiliate at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Before coming to Ashoka University, he held an extraordinary faculty position in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at MIT. He is a PhD from Yale. His primary areas of interest include secure computation, cryptography, and privacy. Dr. Devayan has helped start a number of companies in India and abroad, and as such holds board positions in a number of startups. He is also consults for and advises companies on cybersecurity, helping C-suite individuals and understand and mitigate cyber risks. Then we have Mr. Nitendra Rajput with us. He is a highly accomplished technologist and an expert in the field of artificial intelligence. He currently serves as the Senior Vice President and Head of the AI Garage Center at MasterCard. He leads the development of innovative solutions using machine learning for financial services. Nitendra has spent 18 years at IBM Research, followed by 2 years at InfoEdge, where he established and managed the AI portfolio for various business ventures. He is also a member of the advisory board for the Technology Leaders Program at Laksha University. This is a unique program focusing on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and leadership, aimed at preparing the next generation of technology leaders to drive innovation and growth in the industry. Nitendra is an ACM Distinguished Scientist and an IEEE Senior Member with over 50 granted patents and over 100 publications in top conferences. I thank you, all the panelists, for gracing the occasion, and I hand over the mic to Natasha.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the lovely introduction. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Nutan Kala Joshi to facilitate Dr. Tavpritesh Sethi with memento at the back.
Go in front. Even this is. Yeah, you can give, you just take that, give me this way.
Oh, that's what it said.
Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Shukla Taluja to present Dr. Devayan Gupta with memento and a sample.
can keep it. Back.
Now I would like to invite Dr. Vandana Malhotra to felicitate Dr. Nitendra Rajput with a memento and a cap.
Anand, yes, Dr.
Thank you so much, teacher. Moving forward, I would like to invite the guests on the dais and proceed with the panel discussion. The moderator for the panel today is Dr. Nandita Narayana Swami.
Naveen, Naveen, mic to happy please. One mic. Where's the mic? Where's the mic? Mic.
Can I have people settling down? Okay, to set the ball rolling, I think I would like to invite you to just give a small brief idea of the topic you work on so that the questions can be asked.
Hi, I'm Divine Gupta. I'm really interested in two things related when it comes to AI. One is understanding how people's interactions with it will change things in the longer term, with a special focus on privacy. I'm also very deeply interested in how things are going to change in terms of economics. So I dabble from time to time on the economic side, so I'm very interested in that. But my core area, as you may have heard, is security and privacy. So I'm very interested in seeing when you have systems that use the agglomerated data of thousands, if not millions of individuals, what kind of ability do those individuals retain to control the use of that data in the future? So that's the sort of thing that I'm interested in.
I'm Venkateswara, very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My core focus area is healthcare, and it's an area that touches us all. I mean, it touched us all during the COVID time. And my lab research is on how do we build better data, machine learning, and AI solutions that can be transitioned into the real world. By the real world, I mean decisions that can impact lives in the hospital settings or in the public health settings. So basically, my lab works on the interface of building solutions for both hospitals as well as policymakers.
My name is Nitendra, and over 2 decades, I have been sandwiched between the two worlds. One is the academic world, which really appreciates research and new technology and so on. And the second one is the industry, which wants money. It's never too easy to figure out that the best research can actually generate the maximum amount of money, and that's where I've always been struggling.
So I'd like to invite questions from the audience. Anybody has something to start the discussion? Hello? Yeah, Namita. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So, thank you for joining. So, I mean, I don't know if it will fit to either the three of you, but a general question which I always have is, so if I'm like Googling something, like if I go on Myntra, just a shopping app, and I'm seeing, some clothes that I want to buy, and then I open another social media account like Instagram, and it automatically tells me that you were searching that. And sometimes I feel my privacy is violated. So So, I mean, how would I, most of the time, like, I feel completely like, Google tells me where I have been, where have I gone. 1 year back, I was there, here. So, I mean, is it a boon or a bane? What is it? So that is something which I'm always struggling with.
Depends on what you want. I mean, look, I'll be honest. Working in the privacy sphere, interacting with people in India is very interesting because nobody wants privacy. किसी को नहीं चाहिए. Most of the students, most of the people I speak to, they're not angry that, let's say, some alphabet soup NSA or somebody looked at their post. They're like, why didn't they hit like? That seems to be the main complaint, right? Nobody is really bothered about privacy until it hits them at a personal level, right? Until I say, okay, imagine someone who becomes Prime Minister of India in 2050. And every single search they have made when they were a teenager is with the US government. Every single one, right? I can see some faces turning pale in the back, right? But it's a problem. These are real long-term issues that are going to come. And since given that the focus of the day is on AI, I'm sort of going to be a bit of a good politician, and I'm going to twist that question around a little bit, which is, one of the problems that we face when we are trying to think about, oh, I'm giving out this piece of information, it can harm me in blah, blah, blah ways when I'm giving my consent. I'm on a piece of healthcare data or on a piece of financial data or any other kind of data. We used to have an idea of what it means to give out a particular piece of data. That if I give out my phone number, blah, 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 things can be done. If I give out my X-rays, it means this much harm can be done to me. You used to have an idea of what a particular piece of data can be used for. With the advent of things like machine learning and large-scale data science, I'm just going to put it in that big box, we have completely lost that ability. You have the apocryphal famous case of this US retailer called Target figuring out that a woman was pregnant before she told anyone, right? But this sort of thing means that legislating about this, even thinking about this from an individual point of view, me providing consent for something to be used, to legislators making rules around things becomes very, very difficult because we don't know what a particular piece of data can actually be used for. Right? Because all of this stuff about keeping data anonymous, let's say, or hiding things, it just doesn't work.
But then till the time I don't give my consent, I can't use the apps. I mean,
Oh, even if you do give your consent, they don't give your consent, they don't care. Like, I'm serious. So, for example, Google, right? The Android got caught a few years ago, and Apple was doing the same thing actually. Even if you said location off, they were sending your location to Google. And all of the companies, in many cases, they use libraries that they don't even entirely double check, in especially startups. And we use a lot of stuff from startups. They regularly do not, because all of this stuff is extra. And it's an extra thing on top that they need to worry about. So a lot of the time, your privacy, even all the things that you toggle on and off, is not really, they're not listening to you.
So there is no escape.
I mean, look, you get what you paid for. And if you paid nothing, then
Then we should have a social handle which you pay for and then it will be more secure.
no, it means that we're entering a new kind of economics and everything costs something. Somebody is paying for it. Even the things that sound good. We say, suppose you're saying social media. If you say that, look, I want to use social media and I want to be safe on it, right? I don't want hate speech. I don't want, let's say, trolling. I don't want pictures of people being murdered or whatever. There's some poor person sitting somewhere else on the planet who's being forced to do content moderation and view those images and click yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That person's mental health is being affected. Like, it's a huge problem. So everything costs something. And we've gotten used to our sort of, let's call it Blinkit world.
Yeah.
If I use the name of the recent,
Yeah.
thing that caused a lot of pushback because people were worried about worker safety and so on. Everything costs something.
Maybe we can take other views from panelists.
So I think I'll just give my view from the standpoint of what the questions in the morning have been, and this also. As the Bayan said, we are entering a new kind of world. That's very clear. I mean, there is going to be pushback. There was pushback. Andrew's basically quote on AI being the new electricity, right? So there was this time when everybody thought, oh, electricity will change everything, our jobs will be lost. And then basically we got used to it and we adopted. So AI, data science, that big basket that Devayan talked about, is exactly, we are at that threshold where we are entering, our societies are entering into that kind of phase, be it health, be it social media, be it food, we are getting there. Some areas are more regulated. There's more pushback, like health. It is more regulated. It's very difficult to get AI into a healthcare setting. Wellness, yes, but the treatment, it's difficult. So it'll take some more time. But things like maybe, I don't know, not an expert, but Ganesh's work on computational gastronomy, it's at the perfect point where it can actually create that impact. Maybe sooner because of the regulations that we don't have. We have regulations on food safety, but about taste, maybe we don't. So that's the kind of thing that we should be prepared for. So like it or not, we are entering into these areas. We are entering into these uncharted territories, these gray areas of engaging with the societies around us, the world around us. And privacy is a big concern. Losing jobs is a big concern. But the thing is that, think about it, it also democratizes a lot of things. There was a lot of talk about, will the music sound good? I use an app called Nad Sadhana. I think it's very similar to the app that it democratizes the world for me. I mean, I've been trying to learn music forever, never got into it, right? I didn't have the time to actually get a professional teacher. But I may not be wanting to be a professional musician, but I want to learn it to some extent as a hobby. And that's where it empowers a common man like you and me. Now, what am I losing in that process? What am I giving away in the process? As the Bayan said, there is always a price to pay for everything, right? So I think we have to be prepared. The first shift will happen in our minds, and then it'll basically start changing the world around us. The shift has to happen because the world has already started changing. So I think we better be prepared.
So do you feel like it's more like we should take it as assisted technologies rather than, having that fear that we are going to get dependent on them, or they are going, like, we should not have that fear, right? They are not going to take over us.
If I may, so I think when some technology like this comes, and these days technologies come at a very fast pace, everything happens faster, adoption happens faster, and so on. We forget the fact that the humans have been evolving for centuries. And the human evolution is actually amazing, unparalleled. When a new technology comes, it hits us and then we are disrupted and so on. But it is obvious that we will evolve over it. As you gave this example of electricity, there have been examples of books coming in. So there were cultures wherein knowledge would be imparted through humans, one human to the other, and then again from the next, and so on and so forth, right? When books came in, printed media came in, then you could evolve that culture across generations as well, which was very disruptive. But see how we evolved. So in the same way, I don't think it will ever happen, even if we may have some times during our day when we feel that this is going to disrupt, this is going to change, remove jobs and so on. Nothing of that sort will happen, because the way humans evolve is at a completely different level beyond any such technology in some sense. But as you were saying, I mean, we have to realize that this is the reality. We picked this as one of the tools among the many others. What has also happened is that some people fall prey to it. And a very good example, me being a father of a child who's 10, 12-year-old, we have to be very cautious now that they get into this whole area of, playing those video games. They have been designed by really good experts so that if you do some little amount of work, you get rewarded very quickly.
Right.
And that's how they engage you. It increases your dopamine level and so on and so forth, right?
Incentivized.
So they have designed them such that you remain engaged in them, and so that you keep playing them more and more, and so on and so forth, right? They become prey to it. But if we use that as a tool to improve your thinking ability, to improve your speed and so on, then that's a different mechanism. So do we fall prey to it, which means I become lazy and then I use this app for that, that app for this, and then I don't do anything myself? That's a negative fallout of it. But do you use it as a tool to improve yourself and your lives? I think that's what most of us will eventually do as humans. That's how we evolve.
That's very nicely put.
I think that's exactly right, because we all thought that after getting used to COVID, that you will have everything coming to your house. We have now, when COVID is over, we go to the market, or do we still get things in? No, we do. If we can see a market, we go to the market. It is that you adapt to it. I mean, you do things. Okay, so that's one thing. Any other questions or students? I'm sure you all are the ones who are on the social media all the time. I'm sure you don't tell a prayer at night, but you check your Instagram account.
We all are guilty.
Yeah, everybody is. So, don't you have a question? No.
Till someone thinks, I may add another perspective from the industry.
Yeah.
When technology comes, its adoption also depends on how much revenue it can generate in the market. And to be honest, it is not things that are very fancy in nature, do not translate so easily in the industry to generate revenue. Now, Professor Ganesh, in his fascinating talk, got us interested in all these concepts about generative AI, chat GPT, and so on, right? Does anyone in the room know how much would it cost to train a language model like chat GPT? If you were to build your own startup, how much money would it cost? The amount of compute that it uses some NVIDIA GPU cards, like thousands of those and so on. If you want to get that amount of compute in the cloud, it costs $4 million. Now, sorry? People use it free, but the company, if I am an organization, if I'm supposed to build a solution based on chat GPT type of a solution, I have to invest in a compute which is $4 million. Now, do I generate some revenue so that it is going to make me pay for that amount, huge amount, is a huge challenge, right? So while we all are fascinated, we are using it because it is free today. But if tomorrow, if we move back and become, some of you in the room will become entrepreneurs and we start thinking of building a new organization, a new startup based on these kind of technologies, you need to realize where would the money come from. The investment required to build such a thing is $4 million. So your solution has to be able to generate that much amount of revenue. Those are the questions that you start to ask when you get into the industry. You can be fascinated by technology as a user, you can be fascinated to use it, but if you have to actually make money out of things, honestly speaking, it is a completely different ballgame. And that's what, when you're talking to me about the Plaksha thing, the reason I'm associated with it is because it helps students train to look at a plethora of things beyond just the technology itself. When I was at IBM Research 18 years, right, doing fascinating research and generating great research publications and thinking that now when I publish this paper, the world will change. Unfortunately, nothing happened because of the same reason that there are many things beyond the technology for it to be adopted in the market from a revenue perspective, a usage perspective, and so on. So the ball game in the industry is actually completely different as opposed to having a fascinating technology.
So I would like to add another angle to it, which I think students in the room must be also aware of. The revenue is one side of things, but environmental impact is the other side of things. So I don't know what environmental impact footprint does ChatGPT have, but way back in 2019, when the initial computer vision algorithms, which were the state of the art, it actually consumed the energy equivalent to an entire Bay Area household energy consumption, essentially burning a hole in the ozone hole, in the ozone layer, right? So essentially, we have to think, and that those are the kind of questions that are becoming more and more coming to the forefront now. At what footprint do our models have? They are available to us for free, but somebody had to crunch all that data, which consumes power. And that power is humongous as of this moment. So we do need to look at initiatives which are both revenue generating as well as socially conscious, environmentally conscious, so that we are sustainable in the longer run. Devayan, you might have some.
No, but let's see if we can get some more questions out of them.
Are there any questions? Hello, what's happened to you all? I think they are all too used to being on the computer. It doesn't respond back. Okay, so that is why. Okay, I have one question. How is the misuse of AI?
Oh, it's not. So look, it's going to take a while, right? And anytime a new technology comes in, you mentioned electricity, it's true with cars, it's true with computers, it's true with anything. Anytime a new technology comes in, it takes humanity a certain amount of time to adapt to it. It takes regulators and law enforcement a certain amount of time to, figure out how they can fight crime that inevitably occurs using that technology. And so that's going to happen. And the rate at which we are going to be able to react. So I work a lot with law enforcement. The rate at which we are going to be able to react to different kinds of crimes that are enabled by AI depends on what that crime is. So is it a crime to create a lot of fake news articles and spread fear in some way? What about impersonation online, right? Fraudsters are already using these chat-based applications quite a bit, right? There are probably 10,000 other users which will come to the forefront over the next few years. And, as and when it happens, we'll deal with it. I don't see that as being I think one of the things you must have gotten from all of us, right, is a sense of optimism that humanity will be able to adapt, right? And that, I think, has been core to our civilization across the world for millennia. Like even before this, while we were lighting the lamp, someone here was, they were reading a prayer to Saraswati.
Yeah.
Saraswati is often called the goddess of knowledge, right? If you've ever heard a Saraswati Vandana, there's a phrase in it which says, Samankatu Saraswati, Nishesha Jadyapaha. Anyone knows what Nishesha Jadyapaha means? What is Jadya? Any ideas? Inertia, right? It specifically means inertia of rest. The language separates inertia of rest and motion. Nishesha Jadyapaha, Saraswati, knowledge, does not stay still. She's constantly moving, she's constantly evolving, right? And I think that is not unique to Hinduism. I think various civilizations in their religion, in their culture, have held true to this idea. And science is the modern manifestation of it, that humanity has an endless ability to constantly evolve and better ourselves, right? And no matter, after the good professor suggested that we get ChatGPT to write a poem about C.V. Raman and Science Day, I got it to do so, and it wrote a pretty nice poem. In the annals of Indian science, a name shines bright of a man who made discoveries that gave us new sight. C.V. Raman, a physicist who studied light, his work paved the way for a new insight. Pretty, not bad. It's like a class 8 level poem. It's not bad. It's the same kind of rhyming.
Suppose somebody else did it, what would be the plagiarism?
Well, if you got my students to do it, some of them would also plagiarize, it's a fact. And when you're doing this sort of thing, you have to see that, okay, the way I see it, right? Like I'm just carrying on this conversation directly. There's this worry among us educators that technologies like this are going to help students, quote unquote, cheat, for some definition of that word cheating, right? I think for me, it has really helped me a lot because it tells me what questions I shouldn't be asking.
Yes, and that's
right. And so
the evaluation method, we don't have to give it in the same way.
Yeah, but I worry that it really differs from subject to subject, and it differs from level to level. Because at a certain level, you can't ask that, how individualistic are you going to make the questions? How do you handle a certain large class size? at an early level where you have to ask certain kinds of questions. So I think there's a lot of nuance there which we still have to figure out.
I want to ask you just like the poem. And we say that ChatGPT is a big database, it picks up the word. If you are to give the same keywords again, so will it give you a same poem or will it give you a different poem?
Different. It's generating one word at a time.
If you have the same sequence of words,
One word at a time it is generating. There's a bunch of background weights and other things going on. It's generating one word at a time. It's a probability style thing, which is saying given all the words before it, generate the next word. And there's a bunch of other weights and other stuff going on in the background. And it will do different things each time. One of the more fun things I've gotten these large language models, not just ChatGPT, to do is try and generate their own languages, right? Come up with a fake language that only you know and write something in it and things like that. And there are interesting things one can explore, sort of the theory of my mind that they follow. They do separations and all of that. It's fairly interesting from that point of view, but it's faking it. It doesn't understand any. So we need to be very, very careful when we say artificial intelligence. Like these things are not intelligent in any way, shape, or form. For those of you who've studied a bit of philosophy, there are, formally speaking, vaguely, there are three kinds of reasoning. There's deductive reasoning, Sherlock Holmes style, P implies Q, that sort of thing. There is inductive reasoning, which is what all of these guys are doing, which is data-driven, pattern matching. You've seen a bunch of apples, I think this is an apple, that sort of thing. And there is a third kind of reasoning, which is called abductive reasoning. This is what science does, right? You see the output and you try and infer the cause. You try and infer the laws behind it, right? Now, abductive reasoning, we know machine learning can't do that. There are formal theorems against it, Judea-Pearl and so on. ChatGPT and it's like these large language models do not have deductive reasoning either. You can get it to say A, and after a while you can get it to say not A. And if you confront it with that fact, it'll say, sorry, I made a mistake. Right? It does not have deductive reasoning built in. All the magic that it's doing is purely with inductive reasoning only. It's just making up stuff as it goes along based on patterns it has seen before. But it turns out that's pretty good. You know, there's this great scene in this movie, I, Robot, where Will Smith is talking to this robot, and Will Smith gets really angry. And I'm misquoting, but he says, you know, can you write a poem? Can you compose a great symphony? Can you paint a great painting? And the robot thinks for a while, looks at, and then he looks up and he says, can you?
yeah. Are there any ethical rules, regulations, or policies which are laid out for AI-driven solutions?
So coming from industry, yes, especially finance industry is extremely regulated. There are regulations coming up in India. NASSCOM has been working on something called as responsible AI. In EU, there is an ethical AI framework that EU across the board is doing. So every country, every region is coming up with these regulations on what it allows, what it does not allow, and which is also evolving, as Professor Devayan was saying, that you can say that anonymization of data is fine, or the GDPR stuff that was there in EU is okay, but then there are algorithms that can predict those things as well. But extremely regulated. Coming from the finance industry, we have to pass through very critical regulations on what data are we using, what are the algorithms that we are using, are they able to predict who is that particular user or not, and so on. Like your previous question on Myntra also, right? Even though a website is able to figure out that this particular user was searching for clothes and it passes that information to the other website, most likely it won't be able to map it down to a user like you or your name and so on, if regulations are properly met. So your browsing behavior is being passed on from one place to the other, but not your identity. So there are extremely strong regulations, and that's what I was about to add, that whenever a technology comes in place, it's not that regulators and others are just sitting down there, right? Everyone realizes that something is as powerful. When gun came in, then gun control also came in the same place. So there is a lot of action over there for sure. Yeah.
shot at it from the healthcare standpoint. So obviously there is a lot of regulation and everything that's brought into the healthcare market, including AI. And the current state is that we are looking at AI as a medical device. So any algorithm that we take to the market for that might influence the care delivery to the patient has to pass the test. It has to go through the same FDA rules. It has to get the FDA clearances before it can be used for any decision on a given patient. And that is the concrete side of things, right? But the more fuzzy side of things is, so how often do we regulate it? Because a medical device doesn't evolve. AI evolves with data. So the current standpoint is pretty, I would say, backward in that sense that we say that every time the AI algorithm is updated, it has to go through the FDA clearances again, which is good from the standpoint of the patient safety, which we have to ensure. But that also tells us that our regulation mechanisms also need to really take a stance at it, which is more agile. The out there viewpoint is that unless we can measure something, we know that we can't change it, which means we can't also regulate it, right? So gun control, we have to measure the number of guns. Electricity, we have to meter it. So there are not enough, there's not enough value proposition as of now to measure what is the AI flow through the current, let's say, delivery of commodities, software commodities, or the products that we are having, which needs to be metered in the first place, in the clinics, maybe in the hospitals, maybe out there, even beyond the healthcare settings. And that's where I think we are currently in that fuzzy state, evolving state, where we still want to know how to regulate AI. Currently, what we have is a framework, ethical AI framework, GDPR, PDP, right, HIPAA framework. All these are frameworks which are rule-based, given by experts, saying that check, checklist, okay, we are good to go. But the real regulations actually need to be met.
Yeah, regulating this stuff is hard. Let me maybe give you two examples. One, a non-AI, but it uses machine learning, but still a non-AI example and an AI case. Anyone here who drives, let's say in Delhi, you'll have seen that, there's cameras that are there. And then if you do something bad, the camera takes a photo of your car and it says that, blah, 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 you get a ticket in the mail, something happens. Now, these cameras are completely legal. You're on the road, you have no expectation of privacy. And they are legal because the term is grandfathered in, because there could be a police person standing at the side of the road who wrote down your car license plate number as you drove past. And let's say this camera is honest. It's not controlled by RAW or something, and it doesn't turn and look at you, or it doesn't do anything of that sort. It's a very standard camera. And there's 3-4 companies in India which do all of this. There's some international companies also. Now, the thing is, with the way the legal profession thinks, the way laws are made in India, across the world actually, is, as was mentioned here, permission-based. You have the ability to do this. You do not have the right or ability to do that. You're allowed to turn left here. You're not allowed to turn left there. We have a rules-based mechanism, sort of axiomatic, and there's fundamental rights. We have a rules-based mechanism of legal thought. The problem here is you gave the police forces, let's say, the right or the ability to put these cameras, saying it is equivalent to a police person standing. And this seems logically coherent. Now, if I ask you, is it legal in India for the police to put a GPS tracker on your car and track you everywhere you go? You'd probably say no, they need a warrant for that, right? Except now we have thousands of these cameras and we have software that literally can track you wherever you go, right? Everyone can track. And the thing is, no, for that at least you need some amount of paperwork. Yeah. This is completely public, right? So you thought you were giving people permission to do X when you accidentally gave them permission to do Y, right? So, and this is constantly happening. This is not a sort of corner case. And the moment people get permission to do more things than they should without oversight, people do bad things, right? And this has happened all over the world. Like Obama got caught spying on Republican rallies, then Biden's been spying on someone else. Police in India have gotten caught spying on their wives and girlfriends or whatever. It's constant. No, I'm not joking. This was like over 50% of the queries was just this, because there was no oversight, right? Now, regulation has got up. Now people are trying to fix this. But you're constantly playing a cat and mouse game of catch up, right? Because permissions-based regulation, we need something else. Maybe purpose limitation, maybe something else. And there are some very, very bright legal minds. People in India, like there's Arvind Datar, who's a very famous lawyer. There's a bunch of people in India who are trying to come up with completely new legal paradigms to deal with this kind of thing, because otherwise you just won't be able to keep up, right? And you end up with problem scenarios like, I'll give you, as I mentioned, the second example, something called Compass, right? This is, if you're in the state of New York in the US and you apply for bail, your bail application does not initially go through a judge. It goes through an AI system called Compass, right? And technically speaking, a judge signs off on it, but there have been surveys the judges basically don't actually read anything. They just sign off on whatever the system says most of the time. They're supposed to act as a human in the loop, as it's called, but they don't, not really. And when you have these systems in place, which are data driven, right? And the US, unlike the EU, has proved a little bit slow in adapting to some of this stuff. There are all sorts of problems that come up. The system has automatically been accused of, being racist, being this, being that, and and now people are putting protections in place. But it's again, it's a cat and mouse game.
Suddenly, there are a lot of questions. You wanted to leave?
Yes, I need to leave in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, we'll quickly take those questions. Can somebody give them a mic? Who's there to give them a mic? Just stand up.
So my question is from sports analytics. So AI is everywhere, and if you apply concepts of graph neural networks and build a model, energy level model, how much accuracy can we reach? Like it can change any moment. A sportsman can do any wonder any moment. So how much accuracy can AI give?
I'm not the person to answer.
Half of my life I do sports, so let me try and take a shot at it. And that's where actually you can have a seat. That's where the limitations of AI kind of get reduced. You can use AI to do strategy building. People do use AI to figure out what is the right information and so on and so forth. Now, there was a study which actually biologists were also involved and so on. They saw how the body works and what kind of nutrients do you need, and they were tracing a marathon race. So two people who were running a marathon, and what kind of nutrients go in the body, and then you convert that nutrient into glucose, which is passed on to your muscles and so on, right? So very scientific way of studying things and so on. According to that, over a period of time, the speed of that particular marathoner runner should have reduced, because the ability for that body, which is a machine, to convert it into glucose and pass it on to muscles deteriorates over a period of time and so on, right? Now, what happened was that these two people were very close to the finish line, and that had to push one of them much beyond other. And then sorry, Dr. Pritesh, but that's where the whole concept of biology and so on kind of goes haywire, because suddenly you have that burst of energy which people call as second wave and all that. Where does that come? How does it translate? How does it kind of changes the physiology of the body in some sense? You do not have really data to kind of figure those things out. So up to a certain level, you can use AI to generate these kind of things, but then when motivation comes in, when people have some things in their past life that I have to do this and all of that type of stuff, I don't know if we are going to get there from an AI perspective.
Okay, and the other question, yeah. Okay.
So sir, my question is that
Louder?
Language diverse country like ours, how are AI and natural language processing working? For example, sir, we know in the new national education policy, the government is pushing for primary education in the regional languages also. So the younger kids they now are required to use their devices in the regional languages for education purposes. So how can these two tools help?
So thank you for that great question. I think there is a huge push towards incorporating languages and bringing it into use to make it inclusive. Your question essentially is about inclusiveness of AI, making it available to all. So there has been a lot of initiative around that, even from, so for example, the Bloom model from Google and Google Research India, Pathos Talukdar's models from Google Research India is also about building language models that are built for that are basically trained with the indigenous languages. Our own work during the COVID time actually started with such an initiative which we called Wash Karo. That was before COVID. We had thought of an application which we look at how do we prevent sepsis in the ICUs. We make predictive models about which baby is going to crash in the ICUs 24 hours ahead of time. And we found that in the ICU settings, a lot of readmissions were happening from the part of the city, Delhi, in AIMS, which has poor hygiene and essentially lower education as well. So we said, okay, we can predict about these babies in the ICUs, but can we do something outside of the ICUs? So our work started in 2019, where we were building this Wash Karo language model approach, where we said that let's look at what is being said in the news. Let's use language models to map it to what's happening in the WHO reports, right, and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare reports, and provide interesting tidbits of information to people in their own languages, right, and audio, bite-sized audio, and summarized, and so on. So that was actually doing pretty well, and that's where language summarization models. Google has a model called Pegasus, which actually does very well. It summarized in one of their showcase cases. It summarized mathematical counting from text, right? So we use some of those kind of approaches to basically create these apps but when COVID hit India, we were the first AI app, public health app, to develop interventions. It was presented at the WHO, published in scientific reports, to provide this information in Hindi to people across India. 11,000 users within 3 months of time. What we learned was some very interesting insights about who was using what language. We wanted to expand it to other languages, but then regulations prevented, because essentially only governments were allowed to disseminate COVID information. We're doing that for tuberculosis now, as we speak, in Mohammadpur area of New Delhi. So absolutely an area where there is a push, where there is a need, and I think an initiative, both from regulatory as well as research, as well as, I would say, industry standpoint. But yes, that's coming.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Let's
Nitendra. It was
thank,
pleasure connecting all that.
Mr. Jitendra Rajput. He has a prior appointment. And here, you're back.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry.
Any other questions? Yeah. Can you come in front so that your
told about the environmental aspect of using AI, and we humans are started adopting to implement AI in all the things, right? From culinary or art forms to all kinds of stuff. So does it count in knowing the carbon footprint of how much computational carbon footprint it's producing? Like, is it not a vicious cycle? You use AI or computational power to count or know how much carbon footprint it's producing, and you also use AI and computational power to find a solution to prevent this. So does it really count in adding computational power carbon footprint in the actual environmental aspect?
We'll find out. I mean, I understand what you're saying, right? And yes, to an extent, but in reality, as long as we put these into our calculations, as long as we care about things when we are building these systems, we can plan a lot of this stuff out. Now, if you're talking about sort of really taking it meta, is it worth building a really powerful machine learning system to strategize about how to minimize climate-related losses? I don't know. That's a really meta question to ask. I don't know.
Yeah, so I would just like to say that, like it or not, the environmental footprint is there. When you say reply all in an email, there's quantified impact that we say that don't print out because it saves trees, right? But when you say reply on all on an email, there's quantified impact of that hitting the button on the energy consumption as well. The point is, when I saw that, I'm aware of it, right? When I get aware of it, I may not do that in the coming times. Otherwise, we are doing that without any awareness of the phenomena, right? So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that it is already having an impact unless we bring it to a conscious way of life. And that's just a way of doing it, that you quantify and then you show, and then some people will take action, some will not.
People need to be taught as what is the hidden environmental impact that is there. Because I think many of us do things without realizing what is the hidden impact that is there. Any other question? Yeah. Come in front a bit.
So while she comes in front, I completely agree that awareness is by far the most important thing. Because look, all of us are vaguely aware. What are some of the most polluting activities we do? Fly on planes, right? How many of us are willing to give up flying on planes and take trains instead? Main to nahi karu. I'll take you see very few good people in this room. Congratulations to you. But no, but it's a fact, right? I'm here talking about climate change, but then I take that holiday to Singapore or something. And that is a huge impact. Our food habits, huge impact. What kind of foods we choose to eat, where we choose to live, how we choose to live. By far, those are the biggest things having these large scale impacts. And until we get that awareness baked into our lives, that's not going to change. Sorry, you had a question.
No, you mentioned law enforcement. So if in the near future, at some point, we do consider that machines or AI, can think or feel, would law enforcement also take their feelings into consideration? Would that be
We're quite far away from that. I wouldn't worry about that right now. There are issues with intellectual property rights associated with AI, though. That is there, right? But the feelings, I mean, these machine learning agents as such, someone was talking about, I think it was, we were talking about music and artists performing on stage, right? So you can look up Hatsune Miku, right? Which is a Japanese AI artist, and they use holograph imagery. And she does tours, she does physical concerts with eye contact, as it were, and she doesn't exist, right? And in cases like that, where this fake AI thing is telling people it has feelings, and most importantly, many fans believe that she has feelings, right? And this goes back a long way. In fact, the first chatbot, as it were, there's a legendary chatbot called Eliza, right? Which some of you may have learned about in class and so on. And the person who built it, his secretary and many of his grad students, got so addicted to talking to Eliza and convinced that only Eliza could solve their problems. This is a chatbot that sort of just repeated back whatever you said to it, basically in a slightly different format. They had to lock it up. They had to literally lock it away. And one of them broke into the building to talk to the computer. Right? So like we humans tend to provide we tend to, I'm going to mispronounce this, anthropomorphize a lot of entities without really thinking too deeply about what it's doing. We are quite far away from sort of the robots developing feelings and us having to care about that, fortunately.
We have a lot of movies that show you that.
So at the end of the day, it depends on the implementation by us as humans.
Yeah, but we are very far away from that, right? Like we'll probably have infinite clean energy before we get close to that.
Any other questions? Okay, come. Okay, you take it first. And you comment, Ram.
Taking mental therapy from
So that is a question that I should let an expert answer. But I'll tell you a slightly darker side of it, which is there are far more companies willing to build friend-style chatbots where their objective is to keep people engaged and talking for long periods of time than actually building competent mental health bots. There's a lot of people engaged in that sort of activity. But on the good side of things, I'll let an expert speak.
I'm not an expert in mental health, but I can tell you, I mean, good friends who have built companies around this. Visa is one of the chatbots that, but it never gets to the point where it is all the offloading happens to the AI engine, to the point of counseling. So 9 out of 10 problems, and this is a number that I've been given by the friends, right? So essentially 9 out of 10 mental health problems can actually be handled by a counselor. They do not need a psychiatrist. And you may be able to deal with some of those 9 out of 10 questions or problems that a person might be facing at that point of time in their lives with the use of a chatbot. But one problem needs a psychiatric help. Okay, and that's where we are not there. We are not at the point where we are saying AI chatbot is a mental health solution. So even these companies, what they have, so there was a question, are we going to adopt it? I think it is an augmented kind of an approach where we augment our expertise with AI, right? So all these companies also have counselors and an expert psychiatrist sitting there, if it is a well-meaning company that aims to provide mental health. So again, it comes back to the same point of doctors not using AI being replaced by doctors using AI, right? So that's the slightly longish answer to that. That we are already getting there. There are solutions that are already in the market.
I think that will be the last question from you. Yeah.
Morning, sir. So my question is slightly different from what is being discussed. So, sir, I wanted to ask if you have heard of AlphaZero. So it's a test engine who learned chess just by itself. It was given all the rules and it learned just by itself. And it defeated Stockfish, which is a chess engine who was fed with infinite data of chess. Every chess game that is played online gets fed to Stockfish, and AlphaZero, who learned just by itself, crushed it in a chess game. So with this, I wanted to ask, how important is data fed by us when we can just let the AI learn by itself and have results that might create a large impact rather than creating models of AI that is dependent on us feeding it data.
So what you're asking is actually going back, please sit. Goes back to sort of the notions of supervised versus unsupervised learning. And in different scenarios, you choose different things, right? In fact, you talked about AlphaZero. There are many other models that are even more unstructured, building walls, playing other games where you can have unsupervised learning lead to fairly good solutions, right? And it changes from case to case. But AlphaGo, for example, recently lost against an opponent who had figured out a strategy using a different AI, where they sort of built a wall around it at a certain distance and it couldn't see it coming, which a human would have immediately seen coming. So there's still a lot of back and forth to be had in this story, right? This is still developing. But I take your point, and it is definitely the case that depending upon the situation, unsupervised learning can be very useful, but it's really, situation dependent. And unfortunately for us, this stuff doesn't come with a rule book, right? We're figuring things out as we go along. You want to add anything?
No, I have not studied the backend of AlphaZero, but I know that, for example, AlphaGo, there's been a lot of reinforcement learning kind of approaches where, as you say, imagining things, right? Playing the next move, calculating the reward, taking an action. That also starts with some data. I mean, we have to start with it also started with feeding in the data for the games, that Go games were played. So I'm not sure if that is, maybe I didn't understand the question fully, but I think the question was more about reinforcement learning, where you have a action reward mechanism versus a supervised learning where you are just feeding in the data and predicting what might be next move. So reinforcement learning definitely outperforms if you have a strong backend database. So I think data, I don't know if we can start without data, feeding in data to begin with. That's, yeah.
Plus, don't you think curating data?
Yeah, I mean, it depends situation to situation. But yeah, I mean, reinforcement learning is one of those things that really went through that AI up and down, right? For a long time, people were like, oh, reinforcement learning you've done is not worth it. And then suddenly it really came back up again and became really, really important.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have to conclude here because, yeah, like I told you, we have tomorrow a great event and we need to give this up. So I thank you both for being part of this. We also have one more small agenda for which you will be privy to, and that is we normally on the Science Day we announce the best paper published award, and now I have that. And you will be requested to give the award.
Hi, everybody. So it is a matter of great honor for Sri Venkateswara College that along with being a premier institute of education, we are also an institute with high quality research and have with us such enthusiastic and avid researchers. Our college has a Best Paper Award every year, and it's a great pleasure for us to announce these awards on the day of National Science Day for the years 2020 to 2021 and 2021 to 2022. For the year 2020 to 2021, two Best Paper Awards have been selected. The first paper is that of Dr. Robin Suyesh from the Department of Environmental Sciences for his paper on an integrative approach to infer systematic relationships and define species groups in the shrub frog genus. He'll pronounce it better, I'm sure, Laurgestis, with description of 5 new species from the Western Ghats, India. I would like to, it's published in journal PeerJ. I would like to invite Professor Ganesh Bagler to please hand over the certificate to Dr. Robin Suyesh. Can we have a huge round of applause, please?
You will begin the next award.
Congratulations, Dr. Robin. The next Best Paper Award for the year 2020 to 2021 goes to Dr. Aruna Rao from the Department of Economics, Wildlife Tourism and Local Communities, Evidence from India, published in journal Annals of Tourism Research Empirical Insights. I would like to invite Dr. Tappritesh Sethi to please award her with this certificate. Thank you. Please, huge round of applause, please. It's a huge accomplishment for the faculty. Great congratulations to you, ma'am. For the year 2021 to 2022, we have 2 Best Paper Awards and an appreciation certificate. The first Best Paper Award goes to Dr. Perumal Jairaj from the Department of Zoology for his paper on immunohistochemical and mutational status of telomerase reverse transcriptase in conjunctival squamosal cell carcinoma, published in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. I would like to invite Dr. Devyan Gupta to please award him.
Well done in the presentation. An award for that.
Huge round of applause for sir, please. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much.
The next Best Paper Award goes to Professor Vandana Joshi from Department of History for War of Words and Nerves, Diplomatic Maneuvers, Psychological Operations, and Welfare Projections of British and German Empires during 1941 to 43, published in journal MIDA Archival Lexicon. I would like to invite Professor Bagler again to please award ma'am the certificate. Pardon, Vandana ma'am, if I have made some errors in my pronunciation. Congratulations, ma'am. And last but not the least for this year, I mean, next award, next is an appreciation certificate to Dr. Shikha Gulati from the Department of Chemistry for improving the air quality with functionalized carbon nanotubes, sensing and remediation applications in the real world published in Chemosphere. I would like to invite Professor Nandita Narayan Swami to please award Shikha. Huge round of applause and congratulations to all our winners. Thank you. Well, thank you for all the panelists for such a lovely and insightful discussion. Now, I would like to call upon the professor to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Actually, this was supposed to be done by Vandana, who has disappeared. Okay, so it doesn't matter. I'll thank everybody who's here first for being here and making this day a great. Also, Professor Bhargav for being here and giving us such a beautiful talk. And the panelists, Dr. Pritesh Sethi, Dr. Devayan Gupta, and Mr. Nitendra Rajput for having a very enlivening session here with us today. Also the principal, because without her, I don't think we would have been able to manage this show, and the ICT who have supported us with all the videos and the audios that we had to see. Plus, I would like to also thank all the people who got this room ready. There are a lot of workers who worked late in the night yesterday to get this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just before we disperse, one photo with everybody, and there is high tea for you. So we'll have some tea. Have one photo. Or we just call down this wonderful
First time to find out.
अरे सारिका आ जाओ. Where is she going? And where did the two people who had to take the award, Aruna and
Because we are all assignated by the term itself, and we don't know it's actually left in the law. That's left in the law, so our application. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
exactly.
आ जाएंगे. Where is our photographer? Harsh is there now. So, everybody is coming, right? Which camera to look, we don't know that.
Ma'am, you have to give them their bags. Yeah, bags. I will forget their bags. Platter, Chanto.
Sir has his